Number 5, the Honey Island Swamp Monster. Now our first entry is going to take us down to Louisiana, deep in the bayou, where all manner of sinister creatures are said to call their home. And there's a number of cryptids that live deep in the swamps. We got the Rougarou, the Night Folk, and the Honey Island Swamp Monster, beasts that got my attention right now. The Honey Island Swamp Monster is kind of like a Cajun cousin to Bigfoot. He's described as a gigantic bipedal furry monster resembling a hybrid of ape and man. The creature's been sighted and described dozens of times over through the years, but its initial sightings take us all the way back to the 1960s. This first documented report of Old Honey, as he sometimes likes to be called, comes from an air traffic controller who in his spare time took up wildlife photography, and his favorite spot to snap pictures was in, yep, you guessed it, Honey Island up in eastern Louisiana. After his passing, when relatives were going through his belongings, they found a series of photos and reels of Super 8 film that were thought to contain this creature. Now he claimed that in his time photographing Honey Island Swamp, he had discovered trails of footprints of these giant feet that showed only 4 toes, and near these untraceable mystery prints were the bodies of boars who had been ravaged beyond recognition. Now normally I would just say that's probably just the Night Folk doing what Night Folk do best, but this definitely sounds like the work of a vicious cryptid. Now interestingly, there are some cryptozoologists out there who cast a little doubt on the Honey Island Swamp Monster. Not that they don't think he's real, mind you, but that they think he's a different cryptid called the Rougarou, which I mentioned all the way back 30 seconds ago if you remember that. Another Cajun cryptid that I love so much I couldn't resist sneaking it into this video like he didn't want to pay for a ticket. It's top 6 scary cryptids now. Can't stop me when I'm filming, I make the rules. The Rougarou is described to be similar to a werewolf. It's a giant wolf man who lives in the swamps, but he hunts those who disobey the rules of Lent, which is surprisingly a lot more pious than most werewolves are. Could both of these creatures be out there in the swamps having a little monster mash out there? And if you're looking for way more cryptid content, we have got loads of that on Top 5 Scary and then some. Cryptid's not your jam? We got conspiracies, UFO sightings, stories too good to be true, and stories too true to be good. Click through, stay screaming, stay subscribed, but stay watching this video because we worked hard on it, okay? Moving on.
Number 4. Ogopogo. One of the most common types of cryptid is the lake monster. There's of course Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, Champ, the lake monster from Lake Champlain, and Ishi, the Japanese lake monster. But for my pick, I'm going to be talking about the legendary creature who is said to reside in the depth of the Lake Okanagan in the Canadian province of British Columbia. It is known as the Ogopogo. This creature is closely tied with native myths, which told of a creature that they called Na'atik, which translated to the water god or water demon. They believed that the creature demanded a sacrifice in exchange for safe passage across the lake. Because of this, the First Nations of the area would sacrifice small animals before entering the water. Stories tell of a visiting chief who refused to offer up a sacrifice as he did not believe in the creature, and as a result, when he and his family tried to cross the lake in their canoe, the creature used his long tail to whip up the surface of the lake and suck the canoe and its occupants down to the bottom of the lake. Ogopogo is often described as being a serpent-like creature, about 50 feet in length, with smooth, dark skin, who moves through the water at incredible speeds by coiling its body in vertical undulations and propelling itself forward with its powerful tail. Every year, there are reports from people claiming to see Ogopogo traveling across the Okanagan, with the usual grainy footage and blurry photos being given as proof of the creature's existence. In the 1980s, a cash reward was offered by a local tourism agency if anyone could prove the beast was real. After harsh words from Greenpeace, they were forced to clarify that the proof must be videotaped, and that if found, the monster was not to be captured. The Ogopogo is officially listed as an endangered species, and is therefore protected from hunters. In one of the creature's most famous sightings, he was seen by 50 tourists who watched the Ogopogo for 45 minutes from the shore of a local beach, with one tourist being able to capture 10 seconds of 8mm film featuring the monster. Skeptics say that the sightings of the creature are usually groups of otters that are mistaken for one long creature rather than the several animals swimming together in a row. But regardless of the origin of this cryptid, or whether he is real or not, the Ogopogo has become a beloved tourist draw for the area, with the city of Kelowna, BC even having a statue of the creature as both a nod to local legend and a place for tourists to take their photo with the mythical creature.
Coming in at number 3, El Chupacabra, also known as the Chupacabra or Chupacabras. This name translates to goat sucker from chupa to suck and cabra goat. This is a legendary creature in the folklore, a part of the Americas, with its first purported sighting in Puerto Rico. Now, the name itself comes from the animal's reported habit of attacking and drinking the blood of livestock, including goats. Now, the creature reportedly terrorizes the southwestern US, Puerto Rico, and Mexico, with accounts on the size and shape ranging drastically. Some reports state it is the size of a large bear with spines running down its back, while others report the animal is small and hairless. Reportedly, it can be found in a desert in North America covering over 200,000 miles. Now, eyewitnesses have also claimed sightings in Maine as well as Chile, with sightings even occurring in Russia and the Philippines. Essentially, no goat is safe. The first reported attack occurred in March 1995, 8 sheep being discovered dead, and each one of them with 3 puncture wounds in the chest area and reportedly drained of blood. I see a theme in this list. A few months later, in August, an eyewitness, Madeline Tolentino, reported seeing the creature in the Puerto Rican town of Canovanas, where as many as 150 farm animals and pets were reportedly killed. And in 1975, a similar incident occurred in the small town of Mocha, where it was initially believed the killings were committed by a satanic cult. However, later more killings were reported on the island, and many farms reported loss of animal life, forcing locals to believe that El Chupacabra was hunting their town. Reports and sightings have been noted up until last year, so what do you think? Are you a believer in the Chupacabra? I am. Even though I can't say the name very well.
In our second spot, we have the Green Beach Monster. This is apparently a very strong and scaly, slimy beast that hunts for prey in Ohio rivers. The first encounter happened to a woman named Miss Johnson and her friend. It was August 21st of 1955, and the two ladies were enjoying a swim in a river. One of the ladies was in an inflatable tube, just, relaxing, while Mrs. Johnson swam by. That's when all of a sudden she was dragged underwater. She struggled to free herself, and thankfully she managed to. She resurfaced only to be dragged under again. Thankfully, Miss Johnson managed to free herself once again. She did so by kicking this thing. According to Miss Johnson, the hand that grabbed her was large and hairy and had sharp nails or claws. She also knew that this beast was large and strong just based on the way it grabbed her and pulled her down and held her down. In fact, Miss Johnson was left with multiple bruises and wounds on her leg from this creature. Without this, people probably would have thought that she was just lying. But she had a full-on claw print bruise on her leg. Obviously, the two reported the encounter to the police, and that's when they got a visit from an Air Force colonel. He interviewed them both and took very detailed notes. Before he left, he warned the two women to never mention this encounter ever again. And I mean, that sounds hella suspicious. As if the government had captured this cryptid and then it escaped and they didn't want people to know. So anyway, they should get one of those memory erasers from Men in Black. You know what I'm talking about, the little ksh.
Number 1, the Hat Man. Now, a lot of these entries and stories and cryptids have been told for generations over and over, so I think it's only fitting that I get with the times a little bit and we start talking about a modern cryptid. The Hat Man is the most recently talked about cryptid on this list, if you can call it that. Is cryptid the right word for a shadow person? I don't know, but it's my list, and if anyone wants to correct me, the Hat Man is welcome to come down to the studio. Interestingly, almost everyone who reports seeing this mysterious Hat Man describes it almost exactly the same way. A spindly, tall, shadowy figure that is wearing a hat, hence the name. Some people see a top hat, some see an old, newsman's fedora. Everyone says his attire is out of date by a century or two, so no new era fitted on this guy. You can't see his face at all, just shadows, and the only thing you can make out are his dead, pinprick eyes, shining red in contrast to the darkness of the rest of his physique. And he is watching you. Now, what does the Hat Man do besides checking in on you at night? People who report seeing him appear to be people who are suffering from sleep paralysis or insomnia, and most sightings or reports describe him as being benign, if not terrifying. Watching you, studying you, what have you. There are some, however, who claim that he's not just a visitor and he's a little more sinister than that. Some people tell stories of getting an appearance from the Hat Man and feeling choked or burning sensations on their scalps or chest, or just feeling like a general overwhelming terror and nausea, which I think is totally reasonable if there was a shadow demon in the corner of my room watching me. Now, some people who've seen him claim that that he feeds off your emotions, and that the people who are visited by the Hat Man are those who are already struggling with something like great stress or mental illness, which is probably definitely not made better by a shadow demon. Sometimes people in the same family claim that they can see him. So what's he doing? Is he targeting specific people, or is it certain emotions that he hungries about? Thinking about him already is enough to make my hair stand on end and squint at the coat rack in my room when I turn the lights off. I think I'm gonna sleep with just the lights on tonight, just to like be safe and make sure my cats don't bump into anything or anything. Number 5, Bigfoot. It feels a little strange trying to say anything about Bigfoot because, you know, he's like the most easily recognizable and cited cryptid in North America and maybe all over the world. I find it very interesting how many cultures across the globe have a variation on a giant bipedal ape-like creature. You know, there's the Yeti of the Himalayas, the Australians have the Yowie, and I'm pretty sure about a dozen others. It's a very ancient cryptid, with its origins being difficult to trace back. It's one of our oldest stories as a people, actually. Some of the earliest stories ever come from indigenous tribes telling these stories of giant, hairy, bipedal creatures that would live in the forest. If you've ever wondered where the name Sasquatch comes from, it's an anglicization of Sasquatch, a shape-shifting creature originating from the Thitsales people of Vancouver, described as being a giant ape-like creature that could take the shape of different creatures. Which I guess would kind of explain how the thing is so good at hiding if it's always turning into something else when we're trying to get footage of it. Now, the term Bigfoot came about sometime in the 1950s. Jerry Crew was a lumberjack working in Humboldt County when he discovered a set of large 16-inch footprints sunk deep within the mud of the Six Rivers forest where he was working at the time. He told his coworkers about this odd occurrence, with many of them claiming that they'd seen similar tracks on previous sites, reporting too of various things they couldn't explain, like a 450-pound oil drum going missing in the middle of the night. You know how often that happens, you look one way and then your 450-pound drum is gone. The men gave a name to this mystery creature that they perceived was harassing them and called it Bigfoot on, well, account of the big feet. Sometimes the origin is exactly what you think it's going to be. From here, once a local paper picked it up, the story of Bigfoot spread across the country, referencing this mystery creature leaving tracks in California. It was this, combined with the famous footage in 1972, that cemented Bigfoot as a cryptid with staying power. Now, I'm referring to the Patterson-Gimlin film, named after the filmmakers. You've definitely seen it if you're interested in cryptids at all. It's less than 50 seconds, and it's some of the most famous cryptid footage of all time. It's a very short clip. Everyone recognizes that like classic Bigfoot walk. To date, it's never been officially debunked, and the men who recorded the capture went to their graves insisting there was no hoax present. Now, the existence of Bigfoot is still hotly debated, and honestly probably will be forever unless we ever get some concrete proof, unless Bigfoot ever comes out and holds a press conference. Wherever he is or wherever they are, I hope Sasquatches, Yetis, Yowies, Big Feet, I hope they're chillin'. Probably annoying dealing with paparazzi all the time, and you know what? Let them live in peace. If they want to come to us, they'll come to us. And while you're waiting for that Bigfoot press conference to happen, if you're looking for more cryptid content, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. We've got all of that and then some. If cryptids aren't your jam, we got aliens, conspiracies, true crime, fake crime, basically anything scary under the sun and above it. So stay subscribed, don't miss a single scream, but do that after this video, okay? Wait till the credits. Alright, moving on. Number 4, Thunderbird. Our next critter is gonna be the Thunderbird. Nope, nothing to do with the sick classic car, although it's a mean ride. The Thunderbird is a creature that appears across many cultures, mostly indigenous groups alongside the Pacific Coast and Great Lakes area, all telling similar stories of these enormous, larger-than-life birds of prey. Now, these vary anywhere from stories of, you know, just like a really big bird that would be scary, or sometimes Thunderbirds are more mythical, capable of impressive powers like thunder striking when they flap their wings, which is why they're called Thunderbird. Thunderbird, Bigfoot, sometimes the name of a cryptid really informs what they do. Tribes would tell stories about Thunderbirds to explain natural occurrences like storms or changes in weather or drought, famine, all those things. It's much easier to blame your problems on a big bird than anything else. Now, although they were thought to be dangerous, Thunderbirds were also seen as a benevolent nature spirit, and they would assist the tribe sometimes in searching of food during periods of famine. So they're not all bad, you know, it's a Thunderbird to Thunderbird Thunderbird case basis. Now, it wouldn't be a good cryptid list unless we had a few sightings instead of just stories. So, we're going to talk about one incident in particular with the Thunderbird, the 1977 Lawndale incident. This occurred when a young boy, one Marlon Lowe, was playing outside when he was attacked by two large birds, one of which allegedly began to carry the boy away, until the boy's mother ran to his rescue. Eyewitnesses who'd seen the incident taking place claimed the birds were 4.5 feet long with a wingspan of 10 feet, which is pretty incredible. A 6-inch hooked bill, 3 sharp claws, and a large black body, not really resembling any local birds. So what was it? Thunderbird coming down to soup up prey? Real life Pokemon? Sounds a bit like a starling. Also, a big shout out to that kid's mom. Imagine that power dynamic. Anytime he's acting up, you can remind him of the time you saved him from getting eaten by a giant bird. Oh, that'll get him mowing the lawn for sure. Number 3, the Beast of Exmoor. Whoa! With a name like the Beast of Exmoor, this thing's gotta be good, right? The Beast of Exmoor sounds like something you and a party of adventurers would set out to slay to restore peace and balance to Eternia. So what is the mighty Beast of Exmoor? Well, it's in Exmoor in the UK, which is a real place and not a fantasy castle, where it gets its name, and locals tell the story of a gigantic elusive cat. In the 80s, there were all sorts of stories and sightings of a massive cat being described as similar to a puma or a panther being spotted around the Exmoor area. A farmer around the area claimed that he had lost over 100 sheep in his care, and all of them lost in strange, unnervingly violent ways. Injuries that looked like a feral creature had mauled them. Skin peeled back, skulls crushed, throats cut. This grew the notoriety of the elusive creature, and where all these sightings come from. People would claim that they'd see this huge beast like a black leopard stalking the plains. In fact, it was theorized for a while that it was possible that the Beast of Exmoor was a cougar or another big cat that had been owned by some sort of exotic collector, not naming any particular reality TV big cat owners, that had either gotten loose or let out into the wild to roam free, wreaking absolute havoc on an otherwise sleepy countryside. The problem got so bad that the Daily Express, which admittedly is a gossip rag, offered a cash reward for anyone who could bring the body of the Beast of Exmoor. Unfortunately, Geralt of Rivia was preoccupied, so no one was able to take this deal up. In 2006, a Devon farmer noticed the bones of a puma on his estate, which is odd, as there are very few pumas roaming the British countryside. There's cougars, yes, there's a lot of cougars in Great Britain and the UK, but I wouldn't consider Catherine Zeta-Jones a threat. So was the bones found the remnants of the Beast of Exmoor, or does this elusive cryptid still stalk the night, attacking sheep? The frustrating thing about hunting a cat cryptid is there's no way it's gonna come when you call it. Best thing you can do is put out a big cardboard box and hope that it'll jump inside that, because it's a cat.
Coming in at number 2, Honey Island Swamp Monster. In Louisiana folklore, the Honey Island Swamp Monster is a creature said to have been seen in Honey Island Swamp since 1963. It is described as bipedal, 7 feet tall, with grey hair and yellow or red eyes, and accompanied by a disgusting smell. The first claimed sighting was in 1963 by Harlan Ford, a retired air traffic controller who had taken up wildlife photography. After his death in 1980, a reel of Super 8 film was discovered which showed the creature. In 1974, the monster gained national fame after Ford and his friend Billy Mills claimed to have found unusual footprints in the area, as well as the body of a wild boar whose throat had been cut. Ford continued to hunt for the creature for the next 6 years following that. Now, in folklore, a legend tells of a train wreck in the area in the early 20th century. According to the legend, a traveling circus was on the train, and from it, a group of chimpanzees escaped and interbred with the local alligator population. 2 hunters emerged from the swamp in 1874 saying that they had. Creepy stuff indeed.
And in a number 1 spot today, we have the Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil is a very famous cryptid said to live in the Pine Barrens region of New Jersey. Legend goes that in 1735, a mother gave birth to a child that she did not want. Her and her husband couldn't afford to raise another child. Apparently, she had 12 children already, and after she found out she was pregnant again, she cursed the child and said it was a devil child. In fact, one version of the story, apparently she offered her unborn son to the devil. Anyways, she ended up giving birth to the child and all was well and normal. But as days went by, the kid started to transition into this weird creature. It grew hooves, it had a goat's head and bat wings and a forked tail. It would growl and scream. In another version, the mother was actually apparently a witch and the child's father was the devil himself. And that was the creature that they gave birth to. Either way, it's creepy as hell. So there have been reported sightings of this creature as early as the 1820s. Some say it has a horse's head, long claws, and bat-like wings, whereas others say it looks like a kangaroo with wings. In 1909, that's when this creature terrorized New Jersey. Tons of people were apparently seeing this creature. In fact, due to all the sightings, workers were advised to stay home and schools were closed. Just saying that if they thought that this creature was fake, none of that would have happened, so they were scared for a reason. Eventually, the hype around the Jersey Devil died down. That was until 1927. A taxi driver in Salem City was minding his own business when apparently he encountered this beast. The beast was then following the man and was pounding on the roof of his taxi. Hey, I don't know, maybe he just needed a lift. Then in the 1960s, residents were woken up in the middle of the night to strange screaming. They all knew that this was the cries from the Jersey Devil. And in 1980, the Jersey Devil struck again. Officers and forest rangers were called onto a scene at a farm where a bunch of pigs had been killed. Their bodies were all scratched and ripped open, the back of their heads were eaten, but there was no blood on the ground. There's no explanation for what could have done this to the pigs, besides the legendary Jersey Devil.
Coming in at 5, Wampus Cat. The Wampus Cat is a creature in American folklore and, according to legend, is a result of experimentation during World War II. Now, there are more than 22 million acres of forest in Alabama where you can find deadly and terrifying creatures. However, the one whispered about the most and discussed around campfires is the Wampus Cat. Early references by the American Dialect Society noted the Wampus Cat as, I quote, a creature heard whining about camps at night, and a mythical green-eyed cat having occult powers, or even an undefined imaginary animal. Now back to its creation. Allegedly, the US government tried to create a super animal by combining a mountain lion and a grey wolf through genetic splicing, with the goal of creating an incredibly fast and large creature to relay messages. However, things went wrong when a breeding pair escaped, and their descendants, known as the Wampus Cats, still haunt the area around Chihia Mountain in the Talladega National Forest. Folklorist Vance Randolph described the Wampus Cat as a kind of amphibious panther which leaps into the water and swims like a colossal mink. In Cherokee mythology, the monster is the cat-like embodiment of a female onlooker cursed by tribal elders as punishment for hiding beneath the pelt of a large wild cat to witness a sacred ceremony. The Wampus Cat is used as a mascot for numerous educational institutions. The Wampus Cat also has been referenced in pop culture numerous times, specifically by J.K. Rowling on her Pottermore site. In the story, History of Magic in North America, which lists the Wampus Cat as a source for hair used in magic wands. Pretty cool.
Number 4. Joragumo. One of you delightful little ghouls in a previous video left a comment suggesting this one for me, and I thank you so much for putting me on the trail of this cryptid. I wouldn't have heard about it before, so shout out to the Phantom Spectator for this one. The Joragumo is a monster of Japanese folklore that's kind of like a succubus, but with a bit more of an arachnid twist. I can't say the name of what Joragumo translates to and stay within YouTube guidelines, but just know that it is extremely funny. I will give you a hint. Oldest profession spider. Ask your parents. Joragumo is considered a yokai, basically a Japanese demon. It's a powerful shapeshifter, maintaining the form of a beautiful young woman to seduce its prey and able to transform into a vicious spider to finish the job off. Well, what's she like to eat? Well, she has more acquired tastes than flies and grasshoppers. The Joragumo likes young, handsome men who are lonely and looking for love. When in her humanoid form, she'll seduce them, invite them back to her lair, and well, you can probably guess how it goes. The folklore behind Joragumo is fascinating. In Edo period Japan, spiders were considered to be mythical creatures with alien abilities, which, I mean, come on, totally reasonable. And it was said that the older a spider gets, the more powerful and potent its abilities would become, kind of like a wizard. A Joragumo is a spider that's lived for hundreds of years to be able to shapeshift, and she doesn't even look a day over 25, not bad. An old folktale tells the story of a woodcutter who fell in love with a woman he met at a waterfall. He visited her every day but grew weaker with each visit. A priest accompanied him one day, and when a spider thread reached out to the woodcutter, the priest yelled, warning the woodcutter that the woman he loved was a dreaded Joragumo. Already ensnared by her spell, he persisted and ran towards the waterfall, where he was entangled in the web and never seen again.
In our third spot, we have the Shuck. The Shuck is a ghostly black dog from East England legends. Don't be fooled though, this dog is anything but but cute, cuddly, and friendly. It's got a thirst for blood. Those who have seen it describes it as a big black hound. Some even say it has red or green glowing eyes. Now this ghost dog is said to terrorize rural towns and villages across the country. The most famous as well as most horrifying encounter would be from 1577. One night a bunch of villagers had to seek shelter in a church during a huge thunderstorm. As they were huddled in there, a big black dog burst through the church door and attacked a man and his son. It also knocked down one of the church's pillars, so a part of it actually collapsed. It then ran out of the church, and as it did, it apparently left scorch marks on the wood of the church floor and door. Those marks are apparently still there today. People were horrified by this encounter, and that's how the legend of the Shuck came to life.
Number 2, Goat Man. Okay, some of these cryptids have been a little grounded, realistic animals that got loose or whatever. I'm over that. We need one on this list that's just completely out there in every regard, supernatural and wild. So let's discuss the nastiest kid in Maryland, the Goat Man. Now he might look a bit like Mr. Tumnus, beloved childhood character, but he is not taking you anywhere as nice as Narnia anytime soon, and he sure as heck don't got no Turkish delight for you. He manifests as a half human, half goat, a satyr of sorts. His sightings and descriptions describe him as having a goat's head and the body of a man. The legend of the Goat Man started down in Maryland and is primarily where most of his legends come from, but he's also been sighted around Louisiana and Texas as well. We love a Goat Man that's well traveled. Goats have been figures in myths and folklore for generations, with goats thought to be associated with Satan and demons, but the Goat Man himself is all Maryland. Depending on who's telling the story, he's just a supernatural entity that wanders the woods, or maybe he's a former goat farmer who became deranged after losing one too many goats and he's a madman in a costume. If that origin leaves a little bit to be desired, he's also got a fantastic comic book bad guy origin story where he's the product of a science experiment gone wrong to, I don't know, merge a man with a goat, I guess. Anyway, he breaks out of the lab Stranger Things style and creeps through the woods, hatchet in hand, attacking passersby dare disturb his territory with an axe. The Goat Man was a fairly popular campfire story and urban legend through the 70s and 80s amongst teenagers, where the creature was said to haunt Lover's Lane, looking for canoodlers where he'd split up the action with a sharp axe like he's Jason Voorhees with a set of horns. For any of my Maryland viewers, shout out for me. Is Goat Man still a big deal? Do the kids still tell stories about him? I love this guy, so I am curious.
And finally, coming in at number 1, Pukwudgie. A Pukwudgie is translated by Henry Schoolcraft as little wild man of the woods that vanishes. It is a creature often found in Delaware and Wampanoag folklore, sometimes said to be 4 to 5 feet tall. According to legend, Pukwudgie can appear and disappear at will, as well as lure people to their deaths, use magic, launch poison arrows, and create fire. Yeah, these dudes are not to be messed with. Now, some Native Americans believe that the Pukwudgie was once human, and presumably friends, but then turned against the Native Americans and are best left alone. According to lore, a person who pissed off a Pukwudgie would be subject to nasty tricks by it. Considering they are known to kidnap people, push them off cliffs, attack them with short knives and spears, I would just leave them alone. More interesting still, the Pukwudgie are actually mentioned in Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's epic poem, The Song of Hiawatha. I quote, "Far and wide among the nations spread the name and fame of Kwasind. No man dared to strive with Kwasing. But the mischievous Pukwudgie, they the envious little people, they the fairies and the pygmies, plotted and conspired against him." They have also been identified in the Harry Potter universe, with Rowling describing the creature as, I quote, "The Pukwudgie is also native to America, a short grey-faced, large-eared creature distinctly related to the European goblin. Fiercely independent, tricky, and not over fond of humankind. It possesses its own powerful magic. Pukwudgie hunt with deadly poisonous arrows and enjoy playing tricks on humans. Cool, but incredibly creepy."
In at number 5, we have the Jersey Devil. Known to exist in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, the Jersey Devil is often described as having hooves. A snake's tail, bat wings, and a head that looks something like a horse. There have been many sightings throughout history of the Jersey Devil, with the cryptid dating all the way back to the 1700s and continuing on until the past decade. It is said that the Jersey Devil often glows and can breathe fire or poison water with its breath. Throughout folklore, it is also known as the Leeds Devil, with local residents tracing its origins to a woman named Mother Leeds, the mistress of a British soldier who was suspected of being a witch. When she gave birth to her 13th child, she cursed it. The baby was born as a hairy creature and soon began terrorizing the town and its people, even eating children. Now, like I said, there have been many sightings throughout history. On July 27, 1937, an unknown animal with red eyes seen by residents of Downingtown, Pennsylvania, was compared to the Jersey Devil by a reporter for the Pennsylvania Bulletin of July 28, 1937. In 1951, a group of Gibbstown, New Jersey boys claimed to have seen a monster matching the devil's description, and claims of a corpse matching the Jersey Devil's description arose in 1957. Now, many choose to ignore the Jersey Devil, with it thought to be an undiscovered species of animal, generally classified as living pterodactyl.
Number 4, the Rougarou. Oh, that is so fun to say. Say that at home with me around. Rougarou. Oh, rolls off the tongue. Our next entry takes us deep into the swamps of Louisiana. Deep beneath the brush of the bayou, amidst all the flies, crawfish, toads, and gators, lies something sinister in the sunshiny Pelican State. Alright, I'll knock that off. I won't do that for the rest of the video. I won't torture you. The Rougarou is a centuries-old cryptid, a more Cajun answer to the werewolf. The name Rougarou actually is a direct link from the French word for werewolf, loup-garou, shifting over time. If you L to an R if you can hear it there, I don't know. My accent's not great. The history of the Rougarou can vary greatly, with differing legends and conflicting fables telling different stories of the beast's origins or motives, but it can all be traced all the way back to medieval France. Back in those days, a lot could go wrong. Lost crops, your livestock goes missing, your children go missing, your house burns down, all your investments in cryptocurrency go up in smoke and all your apes get stolen. Any number of terrible things could happen to a French medieval peasant. And when that would happen, instead of cursing out or lashing out at the sky, you would blame the Rougarou for your troubles. It's very easy to pin all your problems on an imaginary werewolf. I do that all the time. I stub my toe, I curse out a werewolf. Villages would capture people who they believed to be acting strangely, or even sometimes just somebody who lived out in the woods, and pin all the blame on the village's problems on them for being a werewolf. So unfair, the discrimination werewolves receive. This tradition of blaming an invisible werewolf for your problems led to the Rougarou becoming a fixture in legends passed down from French Catholics, mostly about behaving. Stories would be told of how if you didn't behave, you didn't follow your parents' rules, the Rougarou would come and he'd snatch you from your bed in the middle of the night and carry you off in the woods. Or sometimes he's like a very Catholic monster. If you didn't adhere to the rules of Lent every year, your sinful ways would see you transforming into a Rougarou. So it's a Catholic werewolf born out of naughty behavior instead of being bit by one. How exactly someone like transforms into a Rougarou is not made super clear, like if it only happens on full moons or if it's a one and done kind of thing and then you're a furry for life. All that's known is that the Rougarou is a deadly creature of the night, stalking the swamps, giving pause to travelers who dare explore the bayou late at night. But hey, so long as you mind your P's and Q's and you promise to give up whatever you said you would for Lent, you and the Rougarou should be headed in different directions. Hopefully. Number 5, the Dover Demon. Starting off on our list is the cutest cryptid on this list in my opinion, but still a creepy little freak. I like to start with the cute ones to kind of ease you into it. The Dover Demon first appeared in Massachusetts in the town of Dover, lending it its name. It appears as a spindly little demon kind of looking thing that sort of resembles a little gray, the traditional big-eyed aliens that you see everywhere. The Dover Demon is identified by its blank face, its red glowing eyes, and its hunched quadruped stature. The Dover Demon was first recorded in the late 1970s, discovered by 3 teenagers who were driving through Mass when they saw something bizarre being lit up by their headlights. Initially, they didn't think too much of it until they noticed that the creature in front of them looked more like a human than it did an animal. The driver, one Bill Bartlett, described the creature as resembling a baby with elongated arms, tan, sandpaper-like skin, which was coarse looking, and no nose, ears, or mouth to speak of on its bulbous, enlarged head. Bartlett claims that he only got a good look at it for a few seconds before it vanished off into the night. Now, there are some who speculate that the Dover Demon is capable of rendering itself invisible, or camouflaging itself because of the description of this story, and that during daylight it prefers to hide itself in the trees of Dover. Now bizarrely, I think, some skeptics write off the Dover demon by claiming it was just a baby moose being seen at an odd angle or under strange conditions. And I don't know if I really buy that. I've never seen a baby moose at night in headlights, but I have seen a baby moose. They would have a bulbous head or front-facing eyes, and a baby moose doesn't have that, so I don't know if it's all that. A more pressing question, I think, is if the Dover demon is a cryptid, or perhaps a visitor from another planet, because it does look a lot like the descriptions of the little grays. Now there's a bigger philosophical question there. Are aliens cryptid? Let me know about that in the comments below. And if you like hearing stories about cryptids and aliens, well, I have some great news, my friend. We got loads of cryptid videos on the channel, so get comfy, click through the playlists, and stay subscribed for something new every day. Number 2, Mongolian deathworm. Our next entry is a cryptid whose name really says it all. If you ever hear something get described as a Mongolian deathworm, you have to figure that is probably not the friendliest form of life out there. For starters, it sounds like it would be way more at home in the dunes of Arrakis than it would be on our Earth. That one's for my Frank Herbert heads out there. The creature is also called Ogoi Korkoi, which translates to large intestine worm, which is, that's just lovely. Appetizing. It allegedly lives in the Gobi Desert, has been evading hunters since the 20s when it first rose to prominence. A paleontologist and author going by the name of Roy Chapman Andrew recounted a story he'd heard at a gathering with several Mongolian officials, where they all talked of the worm at great length. Now, no one among them could claim to have actually seen it, but everyone firmly believed in its existence. In this book, he describes the worm as being about 2 feet long, with no head or limbs to speak of, and has such poisonous skin that direct contact is enough to have you buying the farm. It's described as well as having a sprayable venom and an electric discharge. You should probably see a doctor for that. It burrows underground, only coming up to the surface to hunt and eat, presumably. In 1990, Czechoslovakian cryptozoologist, and wow, that's a mouthful, Ivan Mackerel led a team to try and find the creature in the Gobi Desert. This I love so much because Dune is my favorite book. They use the same technique that the Fremen of Arrakis use to try and find these worms that the Fremen used to deal with the sandworms. They used a rhythmic thumping made from a motor-driven thumper to try and summon the creature out of possible hiding spots. They never found the fabled worm, and that's because they weren't taking spice, so they couldn't see properly. So either it was just a dream, or the thing is very, very good at hiding. And I think with a little work, that could make a fun expression. Oh, it's as hard as trying to find a worm in a desert. We'll workshop it.
And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Black Shuck. Black Shuck, or Old Shuck, or simply Shuck, is the name given to an unknown creature which is said to roam in East Anglia. It is one of the many ghostly black dogs recorded across the British Isles. The Black Shuck is often recorded as an omen of death, and some occasions a more companionable animal. Although it is classified as a cryptid, there have been various sightings and reports of the animal's appearance throughout the United Kingdom. For centuries throughout England, many have told tales of large black dogs with malevolent flaming eyes are often depicted as red or sometimes green. According to reports, the beast varies in size and stature from that of simply a large dog to being the size of a calf or even a horse. Other accounts report that Black Shuck as floating on a carpet of mist, or even appearing headless. According to folklore, the Shuck haunts East Anglia, primarily coastline, graveyard, side roads, body of water, and dark forest. W.A. Dutt, in his 1901 Highways and Byways in East Anglia, describes the creature, I quote, "He takes the form of a huge black dog and prowls along the dark lanes and lonesome field footpaths where, although his howling makes the hearer's blood run cold, his footfalls make no sound. You may know him at once, should you see him, by his fiery eye. He has but one, and like the Cyclops, is in the middle of his head. But such an encounter might bring you the worst of luck. It is even said that to meet him is to be warned that your death will occur before the end of the year." As I stated before, the Black Shuck has been reported many times, with one of the most notable reports being the appearance at the churches of Bungay and Blyberg in Suffolk. On August 4th, 1957, Black Shuck was said to have burst in through the church doors to a clap of thunder. He ran up to the nave, past a large congregation, killing a man and a boy and causing the church steeple to collapse through the roof. As the dog left, he left scorch marks on the door, which can be seen at the church even to this day.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Mothman. The legend of the Mothman is a really freaking eerie one. So the Mothman originates from West Virginia folklore. Apparently, it's a large 10-foot tall gray creature with red glowing eyes and wings, and has the ability to fly over 100 miles per hour, so he's pretty damn fast. This creature has been spotted on a number of occasions. In particular, it's believed that once you see him, bad things are going to happen, so he's kinda like an omen. The first report of this creature was on November 15th, 1966. On this night, two sets of young couples drove out to Lover's Lane to get frisky in their cars. It was Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallet. That's when one of the couples noticed a massive creature with red glowing eyes watching them from afar. The couple, Roger and Linda, freaked out and sped on out of there, but the Mothman followed their car and tried to attack them. Thankfully, they made it out alright, but they were hella spooked and reported their encounter to the police. During the next couple of days, a number of different people reported similar encounters to the police as well. Like two volunteer firemen claimed they saw a large bird with red eyes. Then a contractor named Newell Partridge was out in a field at night when he saw the creature in the distance. He shined his light in his eyes and he said they glowed like bicycle reflectors. He then went on to blame this creature for the disappearance of his German Shepherd. So people all around town were hella freaked out. The scariest sighting would have to be in 1967, around the time the Silver Bridge collapsed. Apparently, people who saw the Mothman then went on to receive premonitions of the bridge collapsing and experienced terrible nightmares. And on the day that the bridge actually did collapse, a number of witnesses claimed that they saw the Mothman perched nearby just watching. That's creepy. As long as he doesn't come to Canada though, I'm good.
Coming in at number 4, dire wolf. The dire wolf was an extinct species of the genus Canis and is one of the most famous prehistoric carnivorous in North America, along with its extinct competitor, the saber-toothed cat. Like I said, these creatures are extinct, however one user from Utah has a different story. I quote, "Not sure what it was called, but I listened to a podcast about cryptids and it talked about basically a modern day dire wolf / human combo that lived on a ranch somewhere in Utah. A family moved into an old ranch and noticed that all the windows and doors were tightly secured and that there had been wolf sightings years ago in that area. The new owner didn't think much of it until they found some dead cows with holes in them. No blood whatsoever. Then the owner saw what looked like a wolf from far away. The wolf creature basically ended up running up to him and he shoots it. The gun does no visible harm though, even though it made a hole in its shoulder. Then the wolf creature casually walks away. The guy ends up looking for one of his missing cows and finds it dead. He also finds a calf getting attacked by the thing and being carried off. If I remember correctly, he tries chasing it down and it outruns him on his horse. The guy doesn't know what he's up against, so he tells a local wildlife expert who shows him different species of wolves. They pass a picture of the creature and the wildlife expert tells him that it's a dire wolf and it hasn't been alive for thousands of years. That is absolutely insane. I'm a strong believer in the dire wolf and have a sneaking suspicion they are still lurking around here. Hunting somewhere, maybe hunting you.
Coming in at number 3, we have Mongolian death worm. The Mongolian death worm, also known as its native name, Olgoi korakoi, meaning intestine worm, due to its red blood-like color and size, which is the size of an intestine. It has often been described as around 2 to 7 feet long and possesses the ability to spit out a corrosive yellow saliva and generate blasts of electricity. Mongolian nomads believe the giant worm covers its prey with an acidic substance that turns everything a corroded yellow color. Legend has it that as a creature begins to attack, it raises half of its body out of the sand and starts to inflate until it explodes, releasing the lethal poison all over the victim. It is said that the livestock and humans are its main prey, and because Mongolia had been under Soviet control until 1990, there is very little known about the cryptid. Nobody is entirely sure what the worm actually is, with some experts claiming it to be fake due to the Gobi Desert being too hot an area for annelids to survive. Some have suggested it might be a skink, but they are said to have little legs and scaly skin, whereas witness accounts have specified that the worm is limbless and smooth-bodied. In 2005, an expedition from the Center for Fortean Zoology crossed 1,000 miles of the Gobi on the track of the death worm. They concluded it was likely a large unknown type of worm lizard, and the powers that were attributed to it were apocryphal.
Number 2, the Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil is a fairly popular cryptid and has been subject to all sorts of sightings and stories since the early 1700s. And I bet you can't guess where it usually shows up. That's right, California. Nope, New Jersey. The Jersey Devil is commonly described as manifesting itself as a chimeric creature with a horse's head, bat wings, a snake-like tail, and hooves. There's an interesting folktale that says that the Jersey Devil was brought into our world when a woman was stressed out over her 13th pregnancy. Good lord, yeah, I would be too at my 13th pregnancy. Okay. She was nervous because apparently this pregnancy felt different, and I guess if she had 12 others, she'd really know. She said that she felt like the baby that was inside her was the devil. When she was ready to deliver her little newborn, instead of a happy little baby, the Jersey Devil was born, flew out into the night, and then spent the next 250 years terrorizing the New Jersey swampland. The creature is deeply rooted in local folklore, and to be honest, it's kind of beloved around Jersey. It serves as the name for the New Jersey Devils, and it worms its way into all sorts of pop culture, games, movies, TV, music. They love them over there. For years, there have been stories and sightings around New Jersey describing a kangaroo-like creature with glowing red eyes hunting on small animals in the surrounding areas, and lots of blurry photos of bizarre hybrid-looking creatures running around the countryside. There have even been hunts and bounties posted for the Jersey Devil with rewards for its capture. So is the Jersey Devil real, or just a beloved local legend? Number 3. Skinwalkers. This one is a very popular cryptid online, and you've probably heard a great deal about them before if you're a fan of this kind of thing. But the term does kind of get thrown around a lot and ends up describing all sorts of things that might not be super accurate. So let's take a look at examining some of the history of the legend and where it stems from. Skinwalkers are apparently like really viral on TikTok. I wouldn't know, I gotta be honest, I try to really limit how much time I'm on that. The Skinwalker is a creature of Navajo legend where it's referred to as a Yi Naldushi, and please forgive me if that's pronounced incorrectly. It translates to, by means of it, it goes on all fours, referring to their tendency to walk like an animal. Navajo witches and skinwalkers go against traditional Navajo values and are seen as the antithesis of their core beliefs. As well, it's worth adding, legends of skinwalkers and Navajo witches are not particularly well known or well told outside of indigenous communities, and some indigenous advocates and groups are not the biggest fan of their folklore and cultural history being made into fodder for ghost stories. Animals commonly associated with skinwalkers are coyotes, wolves, foxes, eagles, owls, or crows, but skinwalkers are said to be able to have the power to assume the form of any animal they see fit. Now, a variation of the legend surrounding the creature is that they're able to extend this ability to taking the face of a human victim, which is extremely scary. Some legends say that skinwalkers gain power from a victim's fear and that they prey on those who are afraid. And some state that looking into the eyes of one will cause your body to seize up, overtaken by the fear, where it will then attack you. On TikTok, as I've come to understand from some very intensive research and definitely not just goofing off at my desk watching TikToks of cats falling down on my phone, is that skinwalkers are popularly thought to be a creature imitating humans or animals and doing a poor job of it. Which case, if that is true, the likelihood of me being a skinwalker? Sky high. Number 3. Qualpalic. The Qualpalic, or the Qualpiluit, is an indigenous cryptid, with most stories emanating from Nunavut, Canada, and Alaska in the United States. The Qualpalic is described as appearing vaguely humanoid, but having scaly and bumpy skin, and long, stringy, disgusting black hair. They are described as being disgustingly ugly and that they reek of sulfur, and I think it's worth noting that you cannot find a single artist's depiction of these things that don't make them just look like vomitatiously gross. Interestingly, the creature is predominantly described as being a female monster, although some local variations of the stories exist where it is described as a male creature, but most tales revolving it describe it as a lady monster. The Qualpalic is a bit of an icy boogeyman, snatching up children who misbehave, waiting around thin ice to crack up and drag those children down into freezing cold water. It's thought that the origin of this creature was first told as a story for practical purposes, as a pretty good way to get kids to not walk on thin ice is to tell them that they'll be grabbed by a gross ice demon. Allegedly, when they grab a child, they stuff them inside their leather burlap sacks, then scurry back downwards into the water. It's said that you can hear a knocking under the ice as a last warning that they're about to strike. Now maybe this is just a personal experience I had, and maybe some of you also had this as a little kid, but I was read a children's book called A Promise is a Promise, a Robert Munch classic, that featured a Qualpalic as a villain that was trying to get a little girl to bring her younger siblings to the Qualpalic as a little snack, and it terrified me so much. I didn't even live anywhere near thin ice and I was scared about it. It scared me bad. Wiry black hair and sunken little eyes got me. Maybe it's not relatable at all, but I thought I would share that. I definitely didn't spend any time near thin ice afterwards.
Coming in at number 4, we have Yowie. Yowie, also known as Yehu, Yori, hairy man, or Yahoo is a fanged humanoid creature or great ape featured in Aboriginal mythology along with Australian raptors or Burrinjaw. It is considered to be the Australian Bigfoot and contains many primate-like features, indicating that it is an undiscovered species of great ape. Yowie is described as being one of the most aggressive Sasquatch species and has been reported ripping the heads off of kangaroos and dogs. In the past, it has been described to be around 7 to 9 feet tall, with a large red mouth and talon-like claws according to Aboriginal legends. It is also noted as having 2 large fang-like canines which distinguish the Yowie from the other Bigfoot species. There are around 140 placental mammals known to exist in Australia, most belonging to the order Chiroptera and Rodentia. Some cryptozoologists theorize that the Yowie could be some form of bipedal marsupial, such as a descendant of the New Guinea Hulatheri.
Number 1, Gashadokuro. And our final entry is going to come from Japan, and as a fabled mythological creature, and may I just say, is one of my favorite mythical monsters I've read about in a while. As soon as I was reading about this thing, I started texting my friends. I was so excited about it. This thing is a real-life Dark Souls boss fight. Maybe I'm outing myself as way too much of a nerd here, but this thing is where the inspiration for High Lord Wolnir and Grave Lord Nito of Dark Souls fame came from. I couldn't resist throwing it out there. Sorry, guys. Formed from tens of thousands of bones of fallen soldiers, the Gashadokuro is a massive titan of a beast, a gigantic skyscraper-sized skeleton. Is that not the coolest thing you've ever heard? A giant which wanders around the countryside during the darkest hours of the night. Their teeth chatter and their bones rattle, which is why the translation for their name translates loosely to rattling skull. You'd have to imagine though, you would probably hear this thing chattering its teeth from a few hundred miles away. You'd hear it in the next town over. It's said that the Gashadokuro is born when mass amounts of soldiers die on the same battlefield. Their bodies rot in the fields and they don't receive proper funerary rites. As such, their souls are filled with torment as their bodies lay face down in the muck, and that malice permeates their bones, causing them to twist and mend into unnatural ways, clumping together to eventually form the humongous skeletal monster of a boss fight, the Gashadokuro. Now, troublesome for humans, it's said that a Gashadokuro is too large and too powerful to be felled by ordinary weapons. Although, I have to wonder if that's still true. I feel like we put more gunpowder in things in 2023 than they did in the Sengoku period, and I'm pretty sure a bulldozer would make short work of a bunch of bones being held together with hatred. It's said that these creatures no longer show up because the amount of dead bodies in one place are not nearly as high as they once were in rural areas of Japan back then, with significantly less wars and plagues occurring, which is a sign of progress, right? You know, if there's so few piles of mass graves that they're no longer reanimating as Godzilla-sized skeleton demons, that's a real positive note for the human race, and I think something we can all smile about.
Coming in at number 2, we have Ahul. The Ahul or the Athol is a winged cryptid often portrayed as a giant bat or even a flying primate depending on the variation. Tales tell of it living in the deepest parts of the jungle of Java and can be found across most of Indonesia. Subspecies can be found on the neighbouring islands of New Guinea in the form the Ropen, a presumed cousin to the Ahul. The Ropen aptly translates to demon flying and is also said to be a big bat, or more commonly a pterosaur. It is said to produce a light, possibly to attract fish. The Ropen is said to have a long snout, large wings, and a long thin crest. It has a distinct face that has features of both a chimpanzee's and a bat's, large dark eyes, red-skinned wings, large claws on its forearms, and is covered in grey fur. It is also noted as having a wingspan of 18 to 28 feet and is said to be the largest bat known to mankind. Now back to the Ahuls. They are said to be covered in a thick brown or black fur much like fruit bats, but unlike bats have a long powerful legs and claws and are supposedly capable of pouncing on and snatching up living prey, including humans. Sightings of these winged beasts are often dismissed simply as mistaken glimpses of owls, eagles, and other large birds of prey that inhabit the rainforests. However, many sources can confirm that the beast does in fact exist, and may even be an isolated and undiscovered species.
Number 1, the Hat Man. Rounding off our list is our most recent cryptid on this list, and a piece of modern folklore that is already making a lasting legacy. The Hat Man is a shadow person, or at least thought to be. Everyone who's seen the Hat Man has described almost the same thing exactly, most concerningly. A spindly, shadowy figure that appears to be wearing a hat. Sometimes a fedora, sometimes a top hat, but everyone describes him as wearing an old, out-of-date style, so you're not going to see him in a shadowy snapback anytime soon. He always appears fairly towering, and you can't see his face. It's obscured, or just not present, and the only thing you're truly able to make out are his pinprick red eyes poking out of the shadows watching you. Depending on who you ask based on the sightings, the Hat Man can be considered somewhat benign. Maybe. It's usually reported that the Hat Man appears to people who are suffering from sleep paralysis or insomnia, and most claims of Hat Man describe him as just watching, observing, studying, or whatever. I honestly don't know if that's better than it attacking you. However, it's not all just stories of nighttime stalking. There are some who claim that when they've been visited by the Hat Man, that he's jumped them or choked them, or they felt burning sensations on their scalps or their chest. Although some say he's just watching you for I don't want to know why. There are many who believe that he feeds off your negative emotions, and perhaps this is how he satiates himself. It's said that people who are visited by Hat Man are those who are already struggling with something emotionally resonating. Sometimes people in the same family even report seeing the Hat Man in similar occurrences, so does he target specific groups of people? Or is it just certain emotions he hungers for? The Hat Man is shrouded in mystery, and even just thinking about him is enough to make my hair stand on end and start eyeing the coat rack in my room just a little suspiciously when I turn the lights off. Number 5, Mothman. We had to start with a classic. He was either going to be number 5 or number 1, and I figured we'd get him out of the way first. He's maybe one of the most universally recognized and classic cryptids out there. He's West Virginia's unofficial mascot, and he's as beloved as the Appalachians and buckwheat pancakes. You've probably heard of Mothman a bunch before, but do you know his backstory? You know where his legends and his legacies start? Unless you're a West Virginia native, maybe not, so let's shed some light on the Mothman, because he would probably love that. You know, he's a moth, he's drawn to it. Most Mothman fans agree that his first reported sighting was in the 1960s, 1966 to be exact. The story goes that a young couple, one Roger and Linda Scarberry, had been driving around at night when they saw a large creature whose eyes were glowing red, standing at the side of the road near the site of an old World War II munitions plant. Linda described as being 7 foot tall, muscular, with giant wings and nightmarish glowing red eyes. Upon being illuminated, the creature pursued them all the way to Point Pleasant. Now, one isolated sighting does not make a cryptid legend, so it was probably the repeated sightings that propelled our favorite moth into legend status. For the next few weeks, Virginians kept reporting sightings of a bizarre, large bird-like creature with glowing red eyes. On December 15th, 1967, the Silver Bridge in West Virginia collapsed, with several locals conspiring that the Mothman was involved and could be seen flying away from the crime scene. I always thought he was benevolent, just like a fun, I don't know, guy. I didn't know he did stuff like that. This is unwelcome news. Maybe it's just because we all like the idea of him so much. He does look weirdly cuddly, but Mothman is an absolutely beloved figure to West Virginia and cryptid fans all over. He's kind of larger than life, and it's easy to forget that the first initial sightings and reports of him was that he was a paranormal threat intent on harming humans, considering just how adorable he is now. He's got movies, stuffed toys, and even a festival in his hometown dedicated to celebrating our favorite freak. And if you're looking for more stories of freaks of nature, or the nature of freaks, stories too good to be true and stories too true to be good, well, we've got all of that and then some on Top 5 Scary. Click through, I guarantee you'll find something you like, and then subscribe and stay scared if you do. But hey, keep watching this video first, because we got way more cryptids to get through before we hit the credits. Let's keep going. Number 4, Goatman. Up next on our list of cryptids that'll keep you from sleeping is Maryland's own Goatman. Now, he might look like Mr. Tumnus, but he isn't going to take you to Narnia anytime soon, and there'll be no Turkish delight in your future. Appearing as a half-human, satiric hybrid, the Goatman is thought to roam around Maryland, but he's been sighted in Louisiana and Texas as well. You know, perhaps he gets bored, perhaps he was taking a tour. The Goatman is said to carry a hatchet with him, and not for hacking any lumber. He's been said to be responsible for missing animals around the wooded areas in Maryland. Now, there's a pretty good historical precedent for goats involved in mythology, with satyrs as a mythical historical cryptid, and goats have been associated with Satan and demons for generations. But the Goatman himself has got a pretty rich history in Maryland folklore. Depending on who you ask, he's either just a cryptid goat man who wanders the woods. Or if that's not satisfying enough for you, one particularly colorful origin for the goat man is that it's the product of a mad scientist's experiment who was experimenting with goats. And when it went astray, the goat man broke loose and started attacking passersby with an axe. I really like this one, and I choose to believe it's 100% factual. The goat man is a pretty popular folk story with teenagers, with urban legends describing the beast hunting down those who are looking to spend a little quality time at Lover's Lane. It said he'll come and bleat ya. Bleat, like beat. It's a goat pun. It was pretty bad. Do goats do that, or is this sheep? I'm not sure. You know what? I shouldn't be practicing here. We're gonna move on from this. The goat man still hasn't been seen as much in recent years, and I sincerely hope that he's still out there. Number 3, El Chupacabra. Since the 1970s, livestock farmers have said its name with a careful whisper, hushed tones under their breath. Is this creature even real, or is it just another tall tale that's gotten out of hand? The Chupacabra is a cryptid notorious across Latin America and the southwestern United States. Its name literally translates to goat sucker, which is hilarious, in reference to its vampiric feeding habits. Now, depending on who is telling the stories and where, interestingly enough, the Chupacabra's appearance varies fairly wildly. In Spanish-speaking countries like Puerto Rico, the Chupacabra is depicted as very alien in appearance. It's very reptilian, has like little bug eyes, and has spines running down its arm and its back. Now, alternatively, and this is the depiction I suspect more of you probably know it as this is the more North American southwestern version of it, the classic Chupacabra, if you'd like, is depicting it as a feral canid-like creature, looking like a mutant dog, usually with missing chunks of fur, angry snarls, looks something more like out of Resident Evil than it would be an alien. I think it's very funny that these are the two speeds of Chupacabra. You have alien or weird dog. There's a small section of the cryptozoology community who suspect that these two might actually be two entirely different cryptids altogether, and we're conflating them, complicating matters ever so slightly, but you know, that's an argument for the cryptid subreddit. A lot of politics there, that's all I'll say. The first origins of the critter can be traced back to the 70s in Puerto Rico, when a string of mysterious, extremely violent livestock deaths were all happening around the country with no explanation for what had happened. These animals, primarily goats and sheep, would be found drained bone dry of their bodily fluids. That's why it's called the goat sucker. There are some experts who believe it's possible that the Chupacabra could be sightings of a thought extinct species called the thylacine, and that's probably not how you pronounce that. I could have looked it up. Known more formally to his friends as the Tasmanian tiger, it's a weird little critter that doesn't quite look like a cat, doesn't quite look like a dog, and is kind of somewhere in the middle. Very cute, but it's thought to be extinct, with its last remains being officially found in 2022. There are some skeptics and experts out there who wonder if perhaps this real-life mythical beast could be what people have seen when they see the Chupacabra. So what do you think, my delightful little comment section? Is the fabled Chupacabra really out there terrorizing the lives of goats, or would you have to be a sucker to believe that?
Oh, because he sucks goats.
Yeah, that's what you gotta get down on the car ride home. Number 2, the Goat Man of Maryland. Maryland is a beautiful state that a lot of important people over the years have called home. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Babe Ruth, and if you believe the folklore, the Maryland Goat Man. I've talked about the Maryland Goat Man a few times on this channel, and I'm very likely to talk about him a few more times because he's a cryptid who just can't be bleat. Like beat, because he's a goat.
Oh!
I'll see myself out. No, there's more of me. The Goat Man is a villain straight out of a direct-to-DVD horror movie. Said to resemble a satyr, this Chronicles of Narnia extra haunts the woods of Maryland, hatchet in hand, ready to attack anyone who dares disturb its territory. Like any good cryptid, there's some variations depending on who's telling the story of what he looks like. Sometimes he's more humanoid, with a human face and a furry body, whereas sometimes it's outright monstrous, with a goat's head and bipedal, looking like something out of a Greek myth. I greatly prefer the latter. The Goat Man has been a popular urban legend for a while now, with the earliest sightings and stories going all the way back to the 70s, when dogs around the area of Bowie, Maryland, were going missing at an alarming rate. Whispers came out about a malicious goat man who was stalking the woods, taking your pets as his prey, and these rumors caught on like wildfire, and the character became a very popular campfire story. You know, you'd see graffiti sprayed on the walls saying things like, Goat Man was here, or Goat Man is watching, remind you to behave. Now, Goat Man's possible backstories are far too good to include. It's half the reason I have such a fondness for this cryptid. Depending on what Marylander you're talking to, you might hear that the Goat Man is a complete mystery. Just a strange goat demon who's bad to the bone. Or, if you want a way more colorful backstory, like I know you do, then the Goat Man is the product of a mysterious mad scientist's experiment to I don't know really. Do something with goats? Very possible this could be a Jeff Goldblum fly situation, somebody merged with a goat. Anyway, he escapes from the lab and he wreaks havoc on humanity and is said to mostly haunt Lover's Lane and go after teenagers in parked cars. I way prefer the backstory where he's a lab experiment and he's like a furry Jason Voorhees going after people smooching. Goatman, we absolutely love you. If you are watching, please feel free to reach out, DM Top 5 Scary. We would love to have you on the channel to do a collab. You can share your side of things.
Number 1. Man Bear Pig. This next creature has been described as the most super serial threat to our planet. You see, there is something out there which threatens our very existence and may be the end to the human race as we know it. I'm talking, of course, about Man Bear Pig. It is a creature which roams the earth alone. It is half man, half bear, and half pig. Some people say that Man Bear Pig isn't real. Well, I'm here to tell you now. Man Bear Pig is very real, and he most certainly exists. I'm serial. Man Bear Pig doesn't care who you are or what you've done. Man Bear Pig simply wants to get you. I'm super serial. He is said to be a demon from hell that thrives on temptation and is known for making deals with societies, giving them nice cars and premium-style ice cream, and then repaying the debt by unleashing unspeakable horrors and carnage upon the next generation. This deal was made by generations who knew the cost that the deal would have on their ancestors, but they were not expecting to live long enough to see the consequences of their actions. Man Bear Pig was recently responsible for a lethal series of attacks in Colorado, but despite the brutality in front of them, many locals still refused to believe that such a creature could exist. There is a rumor that a new deal was offered by the demon, where the town could stave off annihilation if they could give up soy sauce and Red Dead Redemption 2. Of course, the town refused such an unfair offer, cause plain rice. Ugh. They instead renegotiated the deal with Man Bear Pig so that he would simply return in 5 years and unleash his fury 1,000-fold. How long do we have before Man Bear Pig returns? And is there anything we can do to stop him? If only we had taken Al Gore more serial.
Number 5 on this list is the Michigan Dogman. The Michigan Dogman is a scary urban legend of a creature from, yeah, you guessed it, Michigan. It is a massive 7-foot-tall beast that stands on 2 legs and looks a bit like a canine, however it's got the torso of a man. One thing that's very notable about this fearsome creature is its extremely loud human scream that it lets out before it's coming to strike. The first sighting of it was back in 1887, and since then there's been many more sightings all in different regions of Michigan. What's interesting about this creature though is that you won't need to worry about running into it for at least a few more years. I can guarantee that you don't want to be walking around the forest and having this thing appear in front of you, but the good thing is that you don't need to worry about that until 2027. It's believed that this creature only appears in years that end with 7. During that year, it will be out and about in the forests of Michigan, hunting and preying on the victims that it finds. But whenever it isn't a year that ends in 7, it's in a deep slumber hidden somewhere in the state. If this thing was awake all the time, it very easily could be higher on this list because of how terrifying and deadly it can be. But because it's usually asleep, I'm not having it so high up. That being said though, still be careful if you're in a Michigan forest regardless of the year, because I can only imagine that accidentally waking this thing up would probably be very bad for everybody involved. Number 4 on this list is the Amazonian giant centipede. Centipedes are gross, guys. In fact, the only thing that might be grosser than a centipede is a millipede. The centipede that we're looking at today is a very real animal that isn't just gross, but it's flat out scary and dangerous. World Atlas says the Peruvian giant yellow-legged centipede, or the Amazonian giant centipede, is one of the largest centipede species in the world. The creature's about 30 centimeters long and preys on a large variety of animals. Interestingly, the centipede's diet is based not only on other invertebrates, but it can also overpower and kill creatures larger than it in size like lizards, snakes, frogs, mice, bats, and sparrow-sized birds. The centipede's primary weapons for killing prey are a pair of modified legs. The centipede uses these legs to penetrate the body of the victim and inject a highly toxic venom into their bloodstream. The killer creature can even climb the ceilings of caves where they can hold and manipulate their prey like bats with only a few legs attached to the ceiling. A 4-year-old human child was reported to have been killed by the centipede venoms before. So not only can this scary arthropod kill people with its venom, but it's super difficult to fight. That's because it's extremely fast, guys. Having 100 legs means that you can move pretty quickly, and this thing definitely does. It can move up to 3 feet per second, which is really fast considering its size. Also, the nature of its body means that it can crawl into super small crevices that you might not see. The child who died from its venom actually happened to run into this thing in an empty soda can. The kid picked up the can not realizing what was inside, and then the centipede struck. Running into this thing in the forest, or honestly anywhere, would be really horrible. If you see an Amazonian giant centipede, then just walk the other direction.
Number 3, Korokamwi. One of my favorite genres of cryptid or mythical creature is just a regular animal, but big. I mean, that's what the Thunderbird was. Maybe that's evident because the last 2 creatures that I spoke of on this list was a big ape and a big bird, respectively. Can we keep that trend going? Of course. Now, this list has been a little North American centric so far, so our next entry is going to be the Korokamwi, a Japanese cryptid that is basically just a giant octopus. They don't all have to have powers, they don't all have to be complicated, sometimes you can summarize them just like that. It's sort of like the Japanese equivalent to the Kraken, the other really big name in the giant octopi scene. The Korokamwi is a giant octopus god that is said to reside in Hokkaido's Uchira Bay. It's said to be big enough to swallow a ship whole. Its crimson body turns the sky and water red when it swims through. Old fishermen used to tell stories that when the seas or skies would turn red, that meant the Korokamwi was there and you should just avoid that general area. The fishing's gonna be no good. You're gonna get eaten by a giant octopus. Now, the origin of this legend is the best part of this cryptid. He's got some great lore. The legends state that near the mountains near the village of Rebungi, there lived a gigantic spider by the name of Yaushika. His gigantic red body stretched over the mountains. One day, he descended, he was feeling frisky, and attacked the people in the village of Rebungi. He shook the earth as he walked, destroying everything in his path. Now, the villagers were terrified of him because he's a giant spider, and prayed to their gods to save him. The god of the sea, Repunkami, heard the prayers and pulled the giant spider into the sea, where its body was contorted and twisted into the shape of the Korokamwi, the monstrous octopus. Started as a spider, ended as an octopus. That's an icky way to live. That guy's just always been icky. Number 2, Bunyip. Coming in at the number 2 spot for today is gonna be the Bunyip, which from the name alone, you might be forgiven for thinking it sounds kinda cute. You know, you close your eyes, Bunyip. That almost sounds like it's wanting to be an adorable little rabbit Pokemon or something. If only. Also, there's a lot of Pokemon references in this video. I got it on the brain, clearly. Gotta catch them all. I think I'm just sad because Ash and Pikachu retired. Anyway, the Bunyip is a creature from Aboriginal Australian folklore. Its name literally means devil or evil spirit, translated from the Wemba Wemba language. The Bunyip is an aquatic predator with many varying descriptions. Sometimes it's described as kind of looking like a hippo, sometimes it looks like a cross between like a cat dog, and sometimes it's just an incomprehensible, scary, snake-like twisty monster thing. All that's common across all of these depictions is that it's a scary thing that lives in the water. Over the years, there have been a number of reported sightings or findings of mysterious bones in southern Australia that led early settlers and colonists to believe that the Bunyip was a new creature out waiting to be discovered. It inhabits swamps, rivers, and lakes, lurking for prey. Now, the first recorded sighting of it by Australian settlers can be traced back to 1851, when a tracing of the creature's body was discovered near a riverbank in Ararat, Victoria. Local hunters had speared an unknown beast and made an imprint of the creature's body to remember it by, because, you know, if you found something weird, you'd want to remember it. They described it as 11 paces long and 4 paces wide in an extreme depth. Now, sadly, this outline no longer exists. They didn't use permanent marker, but it was enough to spur an interest and a hunt for this possibly mythical, possibly real creature. The Bunyip seems like it could have been a real strange step in aquatic evolution. Could not even begin to guess what it was really, or whatever it was they had found that day, so probably just safe for us to assume that it was a cryptid and there could be more Bunyip out there lurking and waiting. And number 1, Ogopogo. Coming in at the number 1 spot is going to be a local favorite of ours, Canada's very own Ogopogo. Yes, I'm a little biased. I had to include a local cryptid at the end of this one. Much like Bigfoot, almost every culture's folklore includes some variant of a sea monster. The most famous among them is probably the Loch Ness Monster, the fabled plesiosaur that lives deep beneath Loch Ness in Scotland. Ogopogo is kind of like the Canadian version of that. Ogopogo chills up in Kelowna, British Columbia, and is tied deeply to to the native folklore surrounding this area. The Okanagan natives revered a creature they called the Nataika, or Nahatik, which translates to a few things, but all come out meaning roughly the same thing, you know? Water demon, water god, sacred creature of the water. If you're not getting this across, important thing that's wet. Nataka was a demanding lake god, and it was thought that in order to ensure safe passage, locals would have to sacrifice a small animal, a pig, a chicken, and others, into the lake to appease the hungry lake monster. The threat of a lake monster dragging victims to the bottom really kept people in line. Now, it should be worth noting that there is some good evidence and a bit of pushback from native groups to suggest that the demonic view of the lake spirit actually came from European settlers, and that to the Okanagan people, the Nahatiko was a fairly benign spirit that actually protected the valley and was kind of a cool guy. Now, all those names, where does it eventually become Ogopogo? The rather silly sounding name sounds more like it's a toy. Well, a children's song from the 1930s was the first place to ever refer to this sea creature as Ogopogo, describing it in the lyrics as, his mother was an earwig, father was a whale, a little bit of head, hardly in a tail, and Ogopogo was his name. That's as much singing as you're ever getting out of me. Over the years, much like Nessie, there have been numerous possible sightings of Ogopogo seeing something strange in the water that can't always be easily explained. Many people believe that Ogopogo could be like an otter or a seal or something that's always getting misattributed, but the legend is very much alive. Ogopogo has become a bit of a mascot for the city of Kelowna, with the statue of it serving as a popular photo op for tourists. So please, if you're ever in the area, snap a pic with Ogopogo. He loves it, he loves the press, and you don't even have to sacrifice a chicken to him anymore. Number 5, Kamataichi. I love doing videos and lists like these ones because I get to spend a lot of time researching into these different cultures and cryptids I never really would have known about without these opportunities. So thanks for watching stuff like this so I can keep on doing them. That's my greedy reason behind it. I just like learning. Our first cryptid from the land of the rising sun is going to be the Kamataichi. This yokai appears as a weasel with razor sharp sickle-like claws. If you're a Pokemon head, big Pokemon fan, a Sneasel from 2nd Gen, the dark ice type, he's based on a Kamataichi. They've got spiny fur similar to a hedgehog, and they bark like a dog, and they have razor sharp claws. These adorable, funny little guys are extremely lightweight, lighter than the wind itself even, and as such, travel by gusts of wind soaring through the sky like they're radical, furry little windsurfers. Legends of the Kamataichi first came about in the Chubu region of Japan, notorious for its icy sharp winds that were so powerful they would blow men over. These legends then took the form of the Kamataichi, the winds literally personified as this little vermin miscreant. It attacks you in the legs and it knocks you over. You're all exposed and helpless while it picks away at your vitals with its little sickle hands. These creatures are surgical when they strike. A Kamataichi sucks away and feeds on any of the gore left behind by their wounds. These creatures are said to be totally stealthy, impossible to see with the naked eye, and blend into their surroundings well. And here's some pedantic little wordplay trivia. I know all the kids at home love pedantic wordplay trivia. There's some debate as to whether or not Kamataichi's name is nothing more than a cheesy pun. There's a stance that old sword fighters in Japan would use called Kamataichi, translating loosely to sword stance, and well, you can see if you just literally squish those two sounds together. And if you're looking for way more cryptid content, creepy tales, true stories, fake stories, aliens, conspiracies, horror movies, and basically just about everything weird and freaky that could possibly happen on this world, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. So hit subscribe, ring that bell when you do, and stay scared. But also stay watching this video, okay? Nothing I love more than seeing you guys watch them all the way to the end. Now let's keep going. Number 4, Teke Teke. Coming in next is going to be a fairly newer urban legend, but it gripped me so much I had to include it in this. It's the Teke Teke. Teke Teke is a legend about the ghost of a student who was slain when she fell onto a railway line, where she was then split in half by a train. No easy way to say that, might as well just get it out of the way. Much like an Onryo, which, hold on to that thought for now, we're gonna come back to that in a minute. She's a vengeful spirit of a wronged woman who lurks train stations at night, stalking out for her victims. She drags herself across the ground using her arms, dragging the spine sticking out of her torso, scraping across the ground, making a horrifying tick-a-tick-a sound from where she gets her name. And you thought that was just like a cute little sounding name, didn't you? Nope. Try if you can. Just try to get the mental image out of your head of a ghost girl clawing along on just her hands and elbows and her spine following along behind her. She's also carrying a giant sickle with her, so there's that too. She's really not much of a farmer, so I'll tell you right now, she's not using that for crops. If she finds you, Teke Teke will chase you and slice you in half. Whoops. Some variations say that she only takes your legs, which I guess is better, but really not by much. There's a specific variation of the legend that gives Teke Teke a bit more backstory for her origin, saying her name is Kashima Raiko, and she's a specific entity. She died when her legs were severed from her body, and the next part gets a bit creepy, so you might want to grab onto something. Maybe put a little salt circle around your computer. It's said that when an individual learns of Kashima's story, she'll appear to you within the next month. So start timing now, I guess. Kashima Raiko is said to haunt bathroom stalls asking where her legs have gone. If you answer in a way she doesn't approve of, she'll take them from you. Incredibly bizarrely, most of all, this isn't the only bathroom-themed horror story on this list, and I'm not joking, so we'll talk about that in a minute, but in the meantime, sit tight and wait what I could possibly mean.
Number 3 on this list is the Skinwalkers. Skinwalkers, as described by All That's Interesting, are animalistic humanoid creatures chronicled in the centuries-old folklore of various Native American tribes of the United States Southwest, most notably the Navajo, Pueblo, Apache, and Hopis people. It is one of many shape-shifting monsters from Native American legends. Skinwalkers are typically described with a beastly and deformed body, a marred, albeit humanoid face, and blazing orange-red eyes. But the origins of these creatures vary among tribal cultures. Some traditions say skinwalkers are powerful medicine men who succumb to the temptation of using their abilities for evil. Other traditions claim that the skinwalkers are the punitive form of any man, woman, or child who commits a deep sin. In any case, the myth of the skinwalkers is well known among indigenous communities. These Native American monsters are described as incredibly powerful and nearly immortal. They can only be killed with a bullet or knife dipped in white ash, a bit reminiscent of a shapeshifter from popular culture, the werewolf, and its weakness to silver bullets. Shape-shifting animal human beasts who are extremely difficult to kill and super athletic. These things are very dangerous and not a species that you want to mess with. Typically residing in the forested areas of northern United States and Canada, they often travel in groups, which just kind of adds to how absolutely dead you are if you do happen across some. Be very careful of the skinwalkers if you're trekking through some North American forests. Number 2 on this list is an electric eel. So you won't be finding an electric eel in any northern forests like Canada, where I live, which is honestly pretty good for me. But if you live in the Amazon and happen to be going through an Amazon forest, then it's very likely this creature will be in the rivers right next to you. Definitely do not go for a dip in those rivers though, because the electric eel might be waiting for you. World Atlas says a shocking danger lurks beneath the waters of Amazon River in Brazil. The electric eel is not a true eel, but actually a knife fish capable of delivering a massive electric shock to those who threaten it. 3 pairs of abdominal organs of the fish allow it to generate electricity enough to stun an adult human being. The eels use their electricity generating capacity to stun prey before consuming them. Fatal attacks on humans are rare, but not completely non-existent. A single jolt could stun a human being enough to cause the person to stop breathing and drown even in shallow water. Multiple shocks could definitely trigger respiratory failure in humans. In the past, there are cases where the fish have delivered shocks strong enough to kill horses and even stun an adult caiman. If this fish can literally kill a horse, then we don't stand a chance, folks. There also literally isn't anything you can do about this thing other than just get out of the water. Like, it might be able to shock you without even touching you, so you might not even know that you're in danger. These things are also super gross looking and just not appealing as an animal at all. Super cool that they have electrical abilities, but not super cool if they use those abilities on me or you. And number 1 on this list is the Cherokee Horned Serpent. This is another Native American legend similar to the Skinwalkers, but this one is arguably far more dangerous. Another name for the Cherokee Horned Serpent is Yuktana. The Yuktana was, as you might imagine, a legend that originated from the Cherokee tribe in western North Carolina. James Mooney, somebody who actually studied the Cherokee tribe, wrote about this beast in a book he published back in 1992. He wrote, "Those who know say that the Yuktana is a great snake as large around as a tree trunk with horns on its head and a bright blazing crest with a diamond upon its forehead and scales glittering like sparks of fire. The blazing diamond is called Yolonsoti, transparent, and he who can win it may become the greatest wonder worker of the tribe. Still, it is worth a man's life to attempt it, for whoever is seen by the Yuktana is so dazed by the bright light that he runs toward the snake instead of trying to escape. This diamond is so dazzling that it's going to draw you in, and it's very problematic. You are going to lose if you fight this creature. It is just so strong and so powerful that unless you're literally an Avenger, you're just simply not going to stand a chance. It's said that these beasts are born out of envy and jealousy and come from the underworld. Massive serpents with incredible powers that literally come from hell. These things might just be lurking around the forests near you, hugging onto a tree and waiting for somebody to come and try to take the diamond in their forehead. There are rumors that one warrior was actually able to defeat these beasts at some point, but that is honestly just a rumor and never been confirmed. Be very, very careful if you're walking around a North American forest by yourself, and if you see a diamond, just run.
Number 5, Menangle. Starting off of our list of horrifying cryptids that would have the devil checking underneath his bed is the Menangle, a demonic vampire spirit of the Philippines. Now, there is a good chance that I am horribly mispronouncing that name. My Tagalog ain't quite what it used to be. Just being a big vampire creature would be enough to earn a spot on this list, but the Menangle doesn't settle for just the bare minimum. Oh, no. This creep turns it up all the way. Listen to me describe this monster and tell me that it wouldn't be out of place in Elden Ring attacking you in the horrible wastes of Caelid. The Menangle is a humanoid bat creature hybrid. And a quick aside, while I was doing some research for this video, I found it really interesting that nearly every culture has their own variation of a humanoid bat cryptid. There's the Ahul in Indonesia, Kangamato in some African regions, and Bruce Wayne in North America. The Menangle has giant leathery bat wings, which it uses to sweep through the night, grabbing its prey and fleeing off. And we haven't even started talking about the Menangle's namesake and action feature. Its name comes from the Tagalog word tangle, which means to separate, with its full name roughly translating to one who separates itself. Well, whatever does that mean? Well, it's because this nightmare creature can split itself in half, taking to the skies as a disembodied torso with flapping bat wings screeching around. Can you even imagine how soul-stoppingly scary it would be to see a giant bat monster flying around with like its entrails just hanging out for everybody to see, hanging loose like an old man in a gym shower? Its favorite prey is couples, young newlyweds in love, and also people who are sleeping. No respect from this thing. You shouldn't attack sleeping lovers. If you're hearing this and you're locking your doors, a Menangle is said to be thwarted by garlic. Now, garlic will thwart it, but not slay it. I'm just glad I eat so much garlic, and I'm very repugnant, and I'm gonna be alone for the rest of my life, so I have no danger of Menangles. Now, if you want loads more cryptid content, we have got enough to fill up a zoo worth of the creepiest critters ever to crawl through the woods. Not your jam? We got aliens, monsters, movies, true crime, fake crime, and a lot of videos about a big shark. There's a little something to scare everybody. So hit that bell, stay subscribed, and stay scared. And please stay watching this video. I worked hard finding all these cryptids for you.
In our 4th spot today, we have the red-eyed roadside cryptid. This is the name given to a creature that a man named Britton saw one early morning in Texas. So it was June 20th, 2000 at around 1 a.m. He had just gotten off work and was headed home. Now on the route that he takes, he explained that there's this 90-degree turn and you have to go really slow and be careful because sometimes they find cattle out on the road. So he was making his turn when all of a sudden he saw it. And he knew right away it was not an animal of any sorts. This creature had red eyes and was on 2 feet and had black hair all over its body. So Britton, being the curious man that he was, got out of his truck and shined a flashlight at this creature. That's when the creature raised its arm above its head and let out an ear-piercing scream. It then turned around and ran behind a house. So the man immediately got back in his truck and drove away in disbelief of what he just saw. But according to him, he has heard the scream at night before, but he never knew where it was coming from or who or what was making this noise. After doing research, he found out that this creature he saw is related to the Bigfoot. Sounds like it's Bigfoot's noisy younger cousin. Either way, be careful when driving late at night.
Number 3, Kamakiri. Something I really like about reading about Japanese yokai and their mythological monsters when you read about a bunch of them is that they tend to kind of fall into 2 categories, you know? It's either the most terrifying thing I have ever heard in my life, a story of a malevolent spirit that's been wronged and will haunt you and do something unspeakable for a painful death, or they're just like weird little goblins or like weird little ghouls that go around doing silly little things. The Kamakiri is one of the silliest little demons I have ever read about, so that's why I'm including them, because they're hilarious. A Kamakiri looks like a weird little bird, like a little bird monster, with a razor sharp beak and very pointed claws. They're teeny tiny and very sneaky to move undetected. So what does the dreaded Kamakiri do? Are you ready for this? Hold on to something because this is going to terrify you. It breaks into your house at night and it cuts your hair. They hide in your roof and they wait at night for the perfect moment to strike, and then they go in and they just mess up your perfect do. They layer it all weird. They cut the ends right off. They frost your tips and they go after anyone. Okay? They're not picky. If you've got a head of hair, they want to snip it up. Only the baldies are safe now. They wait until you're asleep. And if you're wondering, you're just sitting there like, why would anyone tell a story about this monster? Why would anyone make this up? It was in periods of Japanese history when long hair was really the only fashion and accepted hairstyle. I would have done great. So the idea of a nobleman having his hair cut in the middle of the night was like spine chilling. These days though, it just makes Kamakiri sound like he's like a college prankster than it does a real monster. But that's only half of why I thought this creature was so funny. Aside from the split end touch-ups, a Kamakiri cutting your hair is said to be a sign that the victim is about to unknowingly marry a yokai. Shapeshifters like Yorigumo or Kitsune can trick young men into marriage. So the Kamakiri steps in and he cuts your hair to let you know you might accidentally end up marrying a demon spider shapeshifter woman. And I just got paid to say that sentence out loud. We made it, ma. Kamakiri, you might win the top 5 scary award for one of the funniest cryptids we've ever talked about on the channel. A solid number 2 compared to my true favorite, Akaname, the demon that comes into your bathroom and eats waste, which I guess would make him number 2. That's the rudest joke I'll ever tell on this channel. I'm so sorry. You guys can cut that if you want. Okay, moving on. Number 2, Akamanto. The Akamanto, also known as the Red Cloak, is a masked spirit and may very well be one of the most evil, weird creatures I've ever heard described in folklore, so just wait till you get a load of this. Not like any good folktale, there are some local variations in how Akamanto operates, but the elements that remain consistent across all tales are that the Akamanto preys on you during your most personal moments. You know, he tends to come for kings who sit on a porcelain throne. He visits you in the smallest room in the house. He catches you with your pants down. This demon comes for you when you're on the toilet, if that isn't quite getting across yet. I didn't know how to just say it. The Akamanto then offers you a deadly choice, pulls a little matrix on you, and it asks you to choose between red toilet paper or blue toilet paper. Kind of like that one scene from Squid Games with the guy offering the paper. Actually, a little funny trivia, the creator of Squid Games confirmed this monster is what inspired that scene. So a little symbolism about that you didn't know about before, and now you do. Now, it's all a trick question, of course. Neither of the toilet papers this ghastly spirit has for you are anything like the Royale kittens. The red paper means you'll find yourself all cut up, leaving behind quite a mess, and the blue option means you'll be left gasping for air, clean but slow and painful. The only way to escape the Akamanto's dreaded game is to tell him you've got enough, actually, and thanks for asking, but you're good. No, really, you just have to ignore him. Tell him you're good, or flush quick and hightail it out of there. You know, don't play it smart with him. Don't ask him for purple. Don't ask him for sandpaper. No wise guy answers. He's a toilet paper demon. He doesn't want to hear any of that. It's said that if you mess with him, you mess with the Akamanto, he drags you feet first into the underworld. At least he doesn't flush you. Why did they make that? Why did the backstory behind the toilet paper demon? I do not know. Okay, number 1, Onryo. And our number 1, I went with the Onryo. And Onryo translates almost literally to a vengeful spirit, and in every definition of the words, that statement rings true. They're also sometimes called hatred spirits, because an Onryo is specifically a ghost of someone who is capable of causing grievous harm to the living. Onryo are almost always depicted as women who were wronged in their life. They're not exclusively women, but majority of them are. They were traumatized by their death, and they spend the rest of their days exacting revenge. God forbid women do anything fun, huh? Nailing down exactly what an Onryo is capable of is difficult, because there are so many countless interpretations of the vengeful spirit, but just know at home that nothing good ever comes out of crossing an Onryo. You can expect things like sleep paralysis, telekinesis, curses, evil magic, like I said, really nothing good. It's worth noting that as part of the legend of an Onryo, her vengeance can never be satisfied, no matter how many enemies she fells in her wake. An Onryo will go after her lovers, family, whoever she had the most lingering pain paying for. And after she's done with that, well, she'll just attack indiscriminately. You gotta do something with the day, right? Onryo are a very traditional Japanese story, popping up in a lot of performance art pieces like No, Kabuki, and Rakugo, and they even continue to be the center stage in modern works. Probably the most famous Onryo I think most Westerners would know about is Sadako Yamamura from The Ring, otherwise known as Samura if you only saw the American version, and if you have, you gotta fix that at some point for me, okay? And Onryo traditionally is described as wearing a white barrio kimono. She's got wild, unkempt, long black hair obscuring her face, and in stage plays with dramatic white and blue paint, so she looks like the girl from The Ring, basically. And how does one stop an Onryo? Oh, you don't. Yeah, there's nothing. Once she's coming for you, she's coming for you. So, be nice. Just be nice to the ladies in your life and hope that they never come back as vengeful revenge spirits.